Okay. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Well, hey Douglas, how are you? I'm fine, thanks.
Oh, doing great. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here.
So, 9/11. Yeah, that takes us back a little while. We're coming up on the 20th anniversary. Yeah.
Yeah, amazingly so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was in Boston at the time. I was working. According to your bio, you were widowed that day, and I'm very sorry to hear that. Was your partner, your spouse, working in the trade towers, or tell me the story?
Yeah, so my husband Teddy Luckett was working on the 105th floor of the North Tower, and that was the tower that was hit first,
Mm,
the one with the antenna on it. And yeah, so my story is that he worked in that building for 10 years. So 9/11 was actually my second experience of terrorism because those buildings were hit the first time in February of 1993.
right.
And in that building, so the story goes, in that explosion or there was no smoke outside of any building. You didn't see anything if you look south. Yet he got home after walking down over 4.5 hours at every 30 seconds, take a step, 30 seconds, take a step. It was so tight and smoky that he literally, the shower ran black with soot for like 5 minutes. He was covered in smoke. He walked in the apartment, it reeked of fire, but to the greater world, nothing, it showed nothing, right? So the morning of 9/11, when I finally, registered what was happening, I saw that black billowing smoke going up and over him. He was above it. I knew there's no way anyone was going to make it out of that.
Did you try to call? Did you try to get through with no success?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. We all did, and the cells crashed after an hour. My husband's group was never heard from. 1,200 people of the 2,800 who were killed in the trade centers were never found. The DNA is just, they're dust, which for me was actually okay because the concept of ashes to ashes works for me. It's never really seemed real. And I think that kind of esoteric place has been okay, where other people really seem to feel they need to find remains. But there's some pretty gruesome stories about how that unfolded over the next 5 years after, when they would find different pieces. So I'm pretty grateful that it's this more peaceful place.
Were you contacted by anyone?
Meaning what?
Well, like
Contacted by?
I'm trying to think because like you said there were no remains. There was no particular physical evidence that he was even there except that people knew that he was there. But how would like you didn't get a call from the police or from the hospitals or from anybody saying, well, we're sorry to inform you that.
No, huh? We all knew. I mean, in my little town in New Jersey, which is a mile square, there were four people in those towers because there was a ferry commute, a 45-minute high-speed ferry that had been put in about 10 years, a little more before that. That's why we moved to this area. That got you to Wall Street in 45 minutes, and was just a nice commute. It's about 65 miles from New York, so it opened up the market here. And so as a result, a lot of people from this county were killed. No, it wasn't a matter of, we knew they were there and nobody came home. There was
Yeah.
no contact from many, many people.
So you got a book called The Light in 9/11. When did you write the book? Was it right after it or was it some time later?
No, no, the book is actually, I released it in 2018. It was part of a bigger mission, and that mission was to bring a concept of kindness, a brand of kindness to the world that I, if you will, downloaded about 4 years after 9/11. So to back up, to kind of explain this genesis, is within a few weeks after 9/11, I had this very powerful knowing, if you will, that I had to make something good come from 9/11 or the terrorists were going to win. And that was really not okay with me. I'm a warrior spirit, but it wasn't a warrior of anger. It was a warrior of love. And I needed to figure out the why of everything. It was the only thing I could think of, or actually was given to me, to countermand the terrorism, to find the good, to figure out the why in everything. So I took my, what turned out to be, first 40 very dysfunctional years to the analyst's couch And about 4 years later, had peeled back and dissected and understood so many situations and events and relationships that I actually kind of popped through the ceiling, as I call it, to what would be mental health, if you will. And in that time, received this, it's the only way I can describe it as a download. It just came through me. It wasn't me thinking, but it came through as a brand of kindness. And it came through with the knowing that there was a very simple way we could make the world a better place, that we could cure the problems of humanity in one simple word. And when I tell you, you're going to be deflated because it's so common, but the truth is it's true. And I had this awakening and I sat bolt upright on the endless couch and I went, oh my God, I have it. I've got the answer. We just have to be nice. In saying that, it's now I understand, because of my life and stuff, why that is the truth. But if you back up and you say, wait, maybe if we developed a self-awareness around our own behavior and how we project it to others, and put ourselves in the receiving place of what we're saying, what we're doing, then maybe we have some introspection and we can get along better in the world. And we're going to treat each other like I've been treated, which is with kid gloves. People know my story, so I get that extra moment of pause. I get that extra moment of consideration before someone judges me if I'm doing something crazy or not. But people say, oh my gosh, she's a 9/11 widow. Like, I'll give her all the latitude she needs. Well, if we thought of all of us carry something gigantic, usually like a 9/11, and if we just look at each other in the way of giving that consideration of what happened to that person 5 minutes ago, 5 years ago in their childhood that has made them who they are today, and just cut them a break for 5 minutes, we could have a much more pleasant world.
Well, that's true. I don't think people are that in depth with their initial analysis of meeting somebody. I think, unfortunately, when we meet somebody at a party or in a business situation, obviously the first impression is their physical appearance. After that, it's the way that they speak. And then after that, it's whatever your business dealing or personal dealing is with them.
Right.
If people did, like you said, yes, it would be wonderful. I think it would be a much slower process of people getting to know each other, though. I think it would take longer.
Well, let's look at this. Let's look at COVID. All right. So let's back up for let's take another angle, if you will. We have exactly, almost to the day, a 20-year window, September of 01 to September of 21, when things are going to go back to normal this year, the Delta variant aside, right? Things are back to normal. We've gotten through the worst of it. And what if we backed up and we looked at that differently? So my whole point of everything is looking at things in a different perspective. Just try to consider a different point of view other than yours, other than your experience, because the same event experienced by 10 people will get 10 different explanations of that event.
True.
So what if we looked at 9/11 instead of maybe as a birth canal? So the light in 9/11 is maybe it opened the world, because none of us knew anything about the Middle East 20 years ago, and now we know a lot more. Was it pried open, like giving birth? Was it painful and bloody? You bet. But are we going to wallow in the victimization of that? Or are we going to turn around and learn from it? And that's my call to action 20 years later for people. What do you want to do with this? Are we going to grow from this? Can we gain some wisdom from our own, seeing our own behavior within what happens in our lives? I mean, from a micro to our own personal lives, to a macro from our nation, other nations. It's just again, so my 20-year synopsis would be, yes, self-awareness is the superpower of the future. Vulnerability and not knowing everything is how we're actually going to unlock a lot of this constriction that we're stuck in right now, that we're backed into corners without a way out. And all I'm saying is we just need to shift perspective and see it from some other points of view, none being right or wrong, just considered. And so COVID, so if you look at 9/11, it was like being hit with a hammer, right? A sledgehammer came down and shattered the world.
Yeah.
COVID, so my analogy with 9/11 in the book is, it was like two things in the weeks that followed. It was like people were running around like chickens with their heads cut off, frantically darting in frenetic circles because they didn't know what to do, because they were completely shocked and caught so far off guard. That the other being a stagecoach in an old Western barreling down the mountainside because the driver had let go of the reins. It was out of control. That's how 9/11 felt to me in the first weeks and months and years that followed. Okay, so reins are up. We don't, and there was no leadership showing us how to go because we're such a young culture. We haven't had any experience to really draw from to find that wisdom. And that's a whole nother conversation. But my point to COVID is maybe COVID was Mother Nature's way of saying, pick up those reins and pull them back and say, whoa, slow down, humans. Yeah, everybody needs a snack and a nap and a timeout, and we're going to figure out how to do this.
Let me just go back to 9/11 for a second, because we mentioned that the 20-year anniversary is coming up. Do you think, what is the takeaway now? Because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking in my head, okay, yeah, it's been 20 years. I remember exactly where I was when it happened, watching it on TV in Boston. Where are we with it? What's the perspective now? Because I don't have an answer for that.
Well, I don't think many people have put a lot of thought to it. I think we've been stuck in victim mode for a long time. I think we've been pointing fingers and blaming and not really looking at what was our part in this. Not that we asked for it, not that we deserved it. I'm not saying it was right. What I am saying, though, is did we ask? Were we really doing our due diligence when we went in and we did what we did? When we, were we really helping? Were there ulterior motives? Again, I'm not saying we asked for it or we deserved it, but maybe the perception of Americans has become very unpopular in the last 20 years because we're taking.
Yeah.
We're adolescent in our thinking. We think we know. When I meet people today, after 20 years of analysis, my first description is this: I am a recovering know-it-all. Right.
Yeah.
Because we know everything. And what age group in the human evolution, at what age do we think we know everything when we really know nothing?
Well, I think for me personally, I thought I knew everything when I was a teenager.
Our country is an adolescent country. We're 250, 400 years old, depending on how you want to count it.
Yeah.
It's really young.
Yeah.
And inexperienced. We're between two oceans. We're between two benign neighbors. We're untouchable, or so we thought. So the naivete, and again, it's not with intention. I think the truth is, in the 60s with JFK and going in and trying to bring democracy, because we found something we loved that worked so well for us, we wanted everyone to have it, just like an enthusiastic teenager. But did we ask? You
mentioned that we wanted everyone to have it. It doesn't necessarily work for everyone either.
That's right. Because those cultures are thousands of years old. Just look at the wars. I mean, look at Europe. It goes, the Middle East, that is the birth of mankind. That's like the uterus of humanity. I mean, it's all started there. And we think we know? No. I mean, that's just a really, really, wonderful concept that we want to help everybody, but we have to ask if they want to be helped first.
It's a bit pompous and a bit pious.
Well said. Well said.
But
with all the best intentions.
But with all the best
what they
intentions.
say about the road to hell, right?
Yeah, with all the best intentions.
All the best intentions. Nothing intentionally harmful. But we don't know what that's back to self-awareness and introspection. How was our behavior then received? How were we seen when we went into these countries? And that's just, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, and I'm not trying to pick a fight, but I am trying to unlock this victimization. And we can't heal. And you're asking me where we are 20 years later. I think we're stuck, personally. We've been running. So the second piece of this equation, which is really important, is 9/11 happened 8 years after the internet and 10 years after 24-hour cable news signed on. So they were in their infancies. Mm-hmm. 9/11 happens, and 80 countries had people die in the trade centers, the Pentagon and Shanksville. 80 out of 200 countries in the world, almost half. So it became a global scenario. It was also so fantastical in the sense that we all had an hour around the world to turn our televisions on and watch those towers fall in real time together, like a movie, right? So there's so much about the magnificence of the event. And then you have the feeding frenzy of the media, and you have 24-hour news, which you and I both know there can't be a dark screen on television. You have to fill it. And then you have the internet, and this explosion of information is expanded instantly. And then about 2 years later, we all were licking our wounds, and we were unified, and we were patriotic and helping each other, especially here in New York and on the East Coast and where all it happened. Las Vegas, not so much. The West Coast, not so much. I have relatives in Seattle, and they said to me, it was just a news story. Nobody knew anybody. But it did change the world in the sense that we all have to go through airport security now because of it.
Well, a lot more airport security. Yeah, there was minimal security back before 2001.
Show up and run to your plane, if you were late. So, yeah.
Lisa, we do have to wrap this up. We are out of time, unfortunately. Do you have a website for your book or a personal website you want to give out?
I do. The author website is lisaluckett.com, and it's Lisa, Lisa, and Luckett is with 2 T's, Luckett. You can just Google that, and then the brand of kindness will come up as well. That's called Cosmina, Enlightened Living, which is just this beautiful concept that would be wonderful if the world would assimilate. But as you and I were speaking earlier, it's a very noisy world out there right now, and my hope is that we can get some wisdom from these last 20 years of collective trauma that started with 9/11 and then was just spinning harder and harder with each hurricane, each tornado, each shooting, that it's almost like we haven't been able to come up for air until COVID. And then we all stopped. And so that's what I hope people have time. And I think a lot of people have reevaluated where they are and what their priorities are. So I think there's a lot of good that's coming out, a lot of silver linings. And there's silver linings in everything, because the kindness, ultimately, people show up for you when you're in a tough spot. And that's not something we expect or anticipate as human beings.
Well, let's hope so. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. Amazing.
Thank you, Douglas. So nice to be here. And